Hello, everybody. Real quickly and real quietly, I wanted to give you guys a little briefing before this episode. Why so quiet? Because it's kind of late and I don't want to upset my neighbors. But either way, please enjoy this episode. I had to do it through Zoom, which is not my particular way to communicate. So some of the audio might be a little weird, a little wonky, might break out here and there. But I'm sure you guys will enjoy the episode and the wealth of information that Mr. Tim Ehlers will bring to the podcast. And I hope it resonates with you guys, and I hope you share it and tell everybody about it. So without further ado, please enjoy.
Take advantage. So my hope is, and every day that I come to work, every day that I make some sort of an overture to someone like yourself or whatever, it's an opportunity to get that word out there to say, listen, what's scary is not me. I'm the guy that could be your very best friend to help you to figure out things that people are hoping you will never figure out so that they can take advantage of you. So
Right.
as an advocate for people and as a fiduciary, I'm just really pleased to be here today because it gives me another audience. People know that you don't have to do this alone. There's somebody there that actually cares about you and has devoted their life to service and making sure that you're going to be all right, regardless of where you come from, what your background is. People look at me and, they make a lot of assumptions. For one, I'm a 53-year-old gray-haired white guy, right? So everybody's like, well, and they make a lot of assumptions about, where I might have come from. And they
Right.
know that, I was born to a 17-year-old high school dropout, and my first meals were paid for by the state because I was someone who didn't have the means to support themselves and a new baby. So, I've seen just about every aspect of everything from, government cheese to the C-suite in a $1.5 billion organization as a vice president. So I have seen every level, every strata. And yeah, I wake up every day with the same skin tone, but the fact of the matter is, in a global world, these days, money is what talks, and
Right.
it really matters. And the more you know about money, the more you can support your values and create change in the world. So I'm here as a money guy to help
Right.
people understand how to better support their values with money, because money has no value. Money is
Right.
you really, honestly, there's no gold backing it up. There's no real money that you own that's in the bank that, we all that there's a 10% reserve rate, right? So it's basically a giant federal Ponzi scheme. So
Right.
if you don't do some things correctly and things go wrong, good luck, right? So if you're a safety pup like me and you realize that you don't want to be anybody's victim, then you either have to get the knowledge yourself, or if you got to find somebody with the right kind of heart who has the knowledge that's there to help you. So that's what I'm here today, and I'm hoping that anyone who's listening to your show realizes Wood Wealth Group is meant to be the answer to an industry that does not necessarily put the client first and their needs,
Right.
right? So people often say, well, I'm a fiduciary, I put my client first. And then you find out that they're doing things behind the scenes that are not necessarily in the client's best interest. But, we know that the client will probably never discover that, right? Because they're just not sophisticated enough. And so you really need somebody whose life projects their code and what they live by. And that's what I do. I'm a dad. I got 4 grown children, And now my eyes are set on, living this next half of my life, um, and doing so comfortably without worry. And when you were born with nothing, it always sits in the back of your head that this could all go away, right?
Right.
And it drives you. Say there are two motivators in the world. There's gold medals and there's German shepherds. Not everybody runs because there's a gold medal. Sometimes they run because of the German shepherds.
Right.
And I tell you, when you're a father and a husband with responsibilities, and I run because I don't want any of those German shepherds to ever hurt my family. And so I have to make sure that everybody's okay. So what kind of questions do you have for me?
Right. So I'm actually very happy that you started with talking about financial literacy, because that's something I talk about on the show as often as I can. Um, and that's why it's such a great thing to have you on. When did you um, really start to think about, hey, I got to learn about money here? Is it when you were young, seeing how your mother maybe came up, seeing how she struggled, or was it something else?
Oh my God. Well, I know we don't have 3 or 4 hours, so I'm going to try. My parents were probably the best teachers I've ever had by showing me the opposite of every financial choice you should make.
Right.
So, put it to you this way: I was the kid who, would have a friend over to the house, and then all of a sudden the lights go out, and you look out the window and you see, well, the neighbor's lights are on, everybody else's lights are on. Well, guess who didn't pay the bill on time, right? So being able to manage a budget, right, to understand what's coming in, what's going out. My parents never understood any of that stuff, and they weren't very good at it. My parents also, with money management, investment, any of those things, the only thing that they understood, and even that they didn't understand, was what was available through my father's employer. Okay. And my dad went back to school as an adult and became a mechanical engineer. So he went from a guy that was a carpenter and a draftsman during the Vietnam era to now becoming a full fluid power engineer. So this guy can design machines, he can do calculus in his head. But the guy went to his grave at age 54, being eligible for a credit card 12 months before he died.
Mm.
So he made good money in his later years. He was probably making about $90,000 a year, living in Indiana where the cost of living was cheaper. So he had a good middle class living as a white collar professional. And when my mother got lupus, which autoimmune disease, there's no cure. She got lupus in her 40s, and she passed away at age 50. When my mother passed away, my dad could not bury her. He didn't have the money. And so here I am as a young man with his own 2 children and a wife living out of state. And now all of a sudden I got to figure out how to pay for my own mother's funeral. And I'm an only child. I didn't have other brothers and sisters or anybody to help with this. So now all of a sudden I got to figure out how to take care of this debt, and how are we going to do this? And you learn that because my parents failed to plan, they created an emergency for me. And it would have been the
Mm.
last thing that my mother would have ever wanted for me. I mean, listen, for a lady who never finished high school and never got a driver's license, just like her mother, okay? These are generational types of things, right? And her great achievement is watching me grow and achieve things in life, whether it's sports or academics or all the stuff that I did. I saw education as the great equalizer, because in the classroom, nobody cared that I was a poor kid. They only knew that I was the smart kid. And so doing well academically, watching my parents, this all started to tune me in and understand that you better understand money a lot better. And luckily, um, through my growth in my professional life, I was once a vice president of a $1.5 billion organization where I was responsible for all of that revenue. 300 over 300 locations in the United States and Canada, and what I predicted would become earnings per share. So my ability to be in tune with revenue versus expenses and budgeting and forecasting and planning was done on a macro level that most people cannot fathom. And then when I became a financial services professional, I wanted to take what I learned from that environment and be able to help regular people with their regular issues and problems, because I believe that quite a lot of the people don't understand that as a worker, the people in that mahogany row, that C-suite, they never, not once, ever said, we had a record year. How can we get the employees more pay? Not once. So you got to understand, in a world of corporate oligarchies, wages are not it. You're not going to get there through wages. You have to understand what the forces are that are working against you and how they use leverage and control to keep people where they are. Our education system was designed to put people into factories, and now there's no factories, right? Automation is outsourcing people and putting them out of work. So how do we manage our money? How do we manage our resources? How do we keep ourselves vital and supported and moving forward? Not where the puck is today, but where the puck is going, right? Uh,
Right.
that's what we're trying to do. So my background really got me interested in it because money was always the German Shepherd. And I watched all of the problems. And after my dad died at age 54, and I took over as executor of their estate, I learned a lot about how the court, the probate court, the lawyers, the judges, the financial institution, the mortgage company, all of these people had a lot of concerns, but none of them were mine. And they all revolved around money. And it was a very, very difficult time. And if I can save people from having to go through those things, then, well, maybe when they lose their mom or dad, they might actually be able to grieve because there was a plan for that, no matter
Right.
what it was. The fact of the matter is, this is America, and you can be or do what you want to do, but everything takes money. And money is getting harder and harder to come by. Your generation, Antonio, is the first generation they're saying that they're not going to do as well as my generation did, because more and more these powers are being stacked against you. And there's a multi-billion-dollar industry that keeps you where you are through, you know, giving you false expectations around what your education investment is going to get you, right?
Right.
The debt, understanding what debt really does, because people don't understand it's not just the cost and the interest. It's because you did not put the money to work for you and you gave it to another institution, now there is a lost opportunity cost of not being able to put money to work for you to build your own wealth because you're giving it to a bank.
Right.
Banks don't make money the same way we make money. Banks make money on spread. So when you as a depositor put $1 million in their bank, they're gonna love you because they're only gonna give you 1% or less as interest on your money. But they're gonna lend that $1 million out probably 7 times in the same year. And they're gonna lend it out into things like credit cards at 19 to 20%. They're going to lend it out in personal loans at 7, 8, 9%. They'll do it as mortgages at 3%. They're going to lend it out all these different ways to create streams of income for them, right, off of your money.
Right.
Well, why aren't you the bank? Well, it's probably because you either don't know how the bank works or you don't have the knowledge of what you need to do to create your own world of banking and putting your money to work for you. And let's not forget, it's getting more and more expensive to live with education and healthcare, especially. So
Right.
people are living longer. So the amount of money that you're going to need for the second half of your ball game, we work for 30 years, we retire for 30 years, right? We used to only retire for like 5 or 6 years before we died.
Mm-hmm.
Been a lot longer. So how are you going to accumulate enough money to live on an inflation based lifestyle at that amount of money, right, that you spend every year? How are you going to do that when you spend the first half of your life just trying to pay off all of your debts? Well, you're not. You're just not. So whether it's an education decision or a mortgage decision or car buying or whatever, people need to understand from an early age that wealth is about time, interest rate, and money that you put toward making money. And that time factor is the one thing we can't fix. So the interest rate or the amount of money you can earn, obviously with risk comes reward. Well, as you get older, there's not as much time and you can't take as much risk anymore because you go from high risk, high return to now preserving those assets because you're starting to be an old fart like me, right? My working years could end any day because I had a stroke, or they could end any day because all of a sudden I came home and I didn't know who my wife Kathy was. And these are happening all the time, and people are not prepared for it. And I know sometimes I could probably seem like a bit of a wet blanket, Mr. The Sky is Falling. Well, the statistics are real. It's just that when people go through these problems, they don't talk about it. I mean, think about it, Antonio. If you came from a family that was using public assistance in public housing, and your father had a drug problem, and your mother was, working a low-level job somewhere at the dollar store, are you going to advertise that to people? No, because there's all this societal nonsense around that stuff. So people have all these strong emotions. And when there's family business, right, we keep that in the family. We don't talk about our business with other people that are not in the family. And consequently, there's no collective understanding of what the ramifications are when you fail to plan.
Right.
People also don't understand that 60% of the wealth in America is generational wealth. Now, my family, they didn't have any wealth. They were third generation off the boat Germans that came here to be farmers and factory workers. And there was no generational wealth. My grandparents lived in apartments. Okay. They never had a car that was a brand new car. It takes generations to build wealth, right? So when I talk to people that are newcomers to the US, for instance, right? They're in their first or second generation of being newcomers to the US. Now they've got cultural barriers. They might have language barriers, and they just may not understand what what the consequences are to be a citizen in the United States without enough resources, because this is the land of the free, home of the brave, unless you don't have any money, in which case, see you later.
Right.
It's on you. You go figure that out, because you're free to fail,
Right.
right? But, and this is where we say, privilege, right? Where certain ethnic groups might have privilege or whatever. Over time, that changes. Right now, there are Irish people in the greater Boston area that are quite wealthy, but a couple generations ago, people were throwing rocks at their heads as they fled a famine in Ireland, right? So it wasn't that long ago that they were the ones looking at other people going, well, because of your wealth and your privilege, you can't possibly understand my life, right?
Right.
So Americans especially have very short memories on how and why things are what they are. But my call to action to people is really about, listen, we know what's going on today. And if you can drop your ego and you can just say, listen, I know that this guy has something that he can probably teach me that's going to make my life better. Well, for heaven's sakes, go do that, right? There are opportunities all around us, but you better have the grit, and you better understand whether it's the gold ring or it's the German shepherds. You got to run. You got to run.
You froze for a quick second. I think you're good though. So you brought up my generation, right?
Yeah.
And as someone who's living in this generation, someone who's building or attempting to, I'm realizing that it seems like a lot of the people in my age group, with what happened last year and is still happening, people being out of work, having a lot of time to think in the quarantine and all this stuff, I'm kind of seeing an uptick in young people wanting to take an entrepreneurial route, not the cookie cutter will say graduate college, go get a job, work there for a while, retire. um, I'm realizing that I'm part of a generation that kind of wants to break that mold, so to speak. Would you have any advice for kids kind of in my age group, thinking about
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. And there's a number one, you don't need that. My number one bit of advice to you is you don't need that. And
That being a conventional job.
meaning whatever someone's trying to sell you, you don't need that.
Okay.
And I think that generationally speaking, when you talk to an Xer like me and you start talking about wants versus needs, you better get real clear on understanding what your wants are and what your needs are, and live more according to your needs so that you can put your resources to work to get what you want. And it's what you don't know that is going to be your biggest barriers. So understand that the old farts are not necessarily your enemy, but they can be limited because they can be sometimes off-putting, because they're judgmental, because they have the gift of hindsight that you don't have. And
Right.
you know what it can be when things go upside down. So being a gig worker, for instance, and having no benefits, Well, because this country is screwed up with being the only developed nation that doesn't have a single payer healthcare system, those corporate entities got you. They got you because when your tooth hurts or you get sick, you'll get buried in bills if you don't have some sort of healthcare system. It will cripple you from an early age. So as long as they control the health system, they control labor. And that's a big barrier. So one of the things that I would say, if you're not going to go the corporate route, realize that those things that are offered as benefits, you need to be able to have your own benefits. And
Right.
that might mean that you have to work in the system for a while to get up the resources that you need and protect yourself with those benefits so that you have the necessary capital to do the thing that you want to do. Because many of the people that I talk to that have that, if I want to be independent, I want to be a gig worker, I don't want to go the traditional route. I'm like, okay, that's great, but have you really mapped it out? And have you put dollars next to these things that you want to do? And then let's get real clear about where you're getting your support. Because, you know, as I said with my own kids, I said, you know, the fact of the matter is, once I get you educated, and that's my promise to you, those are my values, is that I want to see to it that you're given the opportunity to get your start in life, whether that be education, or if you wanted to take your education dollars to go buy a trailer and some lawn equipment, and you want to be a landscaper. I don't care. Whatever it is you want to do, my job is to raise you up and get you ready to be an adult with your own money, your own life, and call your own shots. Because as long as you're taking money from me, you're a child. You're not an adult. So
Right.
the cell phone bill, the car insurance, the health insurance, foot your own bill, and then you'll be considered an adult. So when I think back to what I had to support, it's like I had none. I had none. So everything that I have, I had to build it, right? And so for folks like you, I would say number one, find a mentor that's going to help you to understand the things you don't know.
Right.
The other thing is be careful of your spending, because where you spend your money, for young people, that's usually food and liquor
Right.
and weed.
Right.
Okay.
Fun.
So it's fun. It's
Yeah.
fun stuff. And they're also spending it on cars that they should not be owning yet.
Right.
And they're also spending it on rent in Southie. What are you doing?
Yeah.
What are you doing? And they don't understand the ramifications for those choices, right? I'm not trying to judge you, because if you can foot the bill for that stuff and that's what you want to do, God bless. But later on, when you've got nothing because you spent it all, if you hold out your hand, don't expect anyone to fill it up with more money. They're going to slap your hands and tell you to get out of here. Because while
Right.
you were spending everything, I was living on less. I was saving my money. I was being responsible. So we're not the same. Life is a perfect arrangement. You are exactly where you put yourself. You need to be fully accountable for your own outcomes and not blame anybody else. Oh, well, I had a system, or I had a school, or whatever. The bottom line is, we can't control the families we're born into. There's a lot of things we can't control, but what we can control is our grit. And your generation, if you have the grit, are going to far surpass anything that we could have done, because you're getting smarter. You're understanding that all that institutional obey these people, listen to these people, and don't question and go along and that's crap. And you guys have figured that out. You're smart. You also have anything you could possibly need to learn at your fingertips for
Right.
okay. I think Elon Musk is a little nutty in a lot of ways, but for somebody who cares about education as a value, I'll tell you right now, that guy came from where? Where is he from?
South Africa, I'm pretty sure.
Okay. So when you look at Scandinavia, South Africa, many of these other countries, they don't have education systems that look like ours.
Right.
Finland, if there were such a thing as a model of how to train people for where the puck is going to be, Finland. That's
I've heard that.
you need to look at. They're teaching kids how to cooperate. They're
Right.
teaching kids how to leverage what's best in them without ego, without hierarchies, right? We don't have hierarchies. We can work cooperatively and communally, each according to their strengths. Well, oh my God, Tim, what you just said, that sounds like communism. That's not what communism is. That is not what communism is. Communism is the ownership of all production by the state. Okay.
Right.
So get over that. Stop falling for the rhetoric. Okay. Whether it's on the left or on the right, stop falling for the bottom line is that the more we learn and the more we can cooperate, the stronger we are. And there are strengths in teams. Teams get things done, right? But think about what happens when we want to build a bridge in Boston. What does that look like under the free market system, right? How long will it take for that bridge to get built and how much will it cost? And now let's look at what happens in a different country when they want to make a bridge. Well, listen, gang, the more you're able to work together in teams, the more efficient you'll be, the more likely you'll be to have a safe and well-constructed bridge, and it will last, you know?
Right.
So long way to get to advice for younger folks, but just know that, when people my age talk trash about your generation, I'm not one of them, because I really believe that what some of my people think are bad things about your generation is really just their own internal biases. They're not seeing the world through the eyes of someone who was raised on YouTube to learn anything they want to learn.
Right.
I mean, I had to sit in libraries, write term papers with actual books that I had to find in the stacks. And right, it wasn't sit there and just Google
Books.
what? Right?
Yeah.
Very different world. You've got all the tools in the world at your disposal. Use them, but have the grit, have a plan, right?
Right.
Get there.
It's interesting that you brought up the groups dynamic, because I remember being a kid, either in elementary school or middle school, somewhere around. I probably heard it throughout the whole time. It would be teachers talking about, hey, the old thing of sitting in your cubicle and working on your own on a certain project, it's kind of going away. And that was back then. I haven't been in elementary school for a while. So, and you see it now, like you mentioned, groups are the way to go. That's why they started implementing more group work and all these type of things. But a lot of people, especially young people who want to be business owners, I'm realizing, a lot of them want to take it on their own. They want to take the whole thing on their own, and it's not the right way to go. You got to find, eventually at a point, you might be able to get yourself so far, but you get to a point where it's like, we need to start outsourcing some things and making a team here.
Right. And you have to understand. So here are some people that you're going to need to know. Okay. If you want to start a business, number one, you better find out what your tax situation should look like. So if you are doing business as a DBA and it's just your company is you, that has one kind of tax exposure. Then there are S corporations, there are C corporations, right? There are limited partnerships. They all have different tax ramifications, and taxes will be your biggest obstacle as a business owner, guaranteed. And if you don't have a plan for that based on your business model before you get started, you've already hurt yourself. Number two, you need to know a property and casualty insurance expert, because when you start offering goods or services to the public, you have now opened up a world of liability that you do not comprehend.
Right.
Now, how you are a corporation or how you're doing business, that directly relates to how you shield yourself from liability, right? Like, let's say, for instance, I own 2 rental properties. That's a real common one because everybody in the Northeast is obsessed with passive income, not realizing that that is probably not as smart as you think it is because they haven't done the math, right?
Sure.
But let's say I have 2 rental properties, and those rental properties are paying me $2,000 a month. But I have a mortgage on the properties that are $2,000 a month. Well, that's at least break even, right?
Right.
No, it's really not, because the people that are paying me the rent are paying me gross wages, gross income to me. And then I will pay the mortgage with after-tax dollars. So I'm losing.
Right.
And if one of those people slips and falls and says, well, you didn't fix the steps, now what do I have? Do I still own those homes, or have they ruined me? Well, if each property is its own LLC, limited liability corporation, then perhaps I might have kept myself safe. But I need to know how to file a report every year, how to do all of that stuff. So once again, talk to people who have done this. Talk
Right.
to people who are doing it. Learn what wheel has already been invented and talk to them about where it breaks down. Where are the problems? Talk to people who have had good experiences and people who have had bad experiences, right? We live in a very litigious country. People will sue you at the drop of a hat. If you don't have protection that is in balance with your assets, then you are at risk. I've seen people worth $3-4 million. And when I asked them as a comprehensive planner, I said, let me see your home and auto insurance. And like, why would you care about my home and auto insurance? Well, I need to establish whether or not you're at risk. You might have $3 million sitting in the bank, but you only carry $500,000 worth of liability. Now you hit somebody's child with your car. Do you think you get to keep your $3 million in assets? Oh, hell no.
Right.
They are going to take every last dime from you, unless the insurance company can say, well, we can give you a check right now for $2 million. Okay, we'll settle. And now I get to keep my $3 million worth of, right? And
Sure.
you have to understand, what are all the costs? Taxes and protection, those are big operating costs, right? And you're going to have, if you have employees, now you have payroll taxes. Now you have employee benefits that they're going to want from you. And we now in Massachusetts have a mandatory paid family leave, even for gig workers. Why? We have to have it because if we have another pandemic, well, what is the state paying for unemployment benefits for people? Well, if more and more people are gravitating toward a system that doesn't pay into that, well, then how are they supposed to pay? That's just insurance. So when people saw that they were getting unemployment, that's insurance. So
Right.
somebody had to pay that. The insurance company didn't just, go to the basement and start filling buckets with dollar bills, right? Money has to come from somewhere. So understand how to do a business plan and how to operate a profit and loss sheet, your P&L. You have to understand things like, oh, well, I have personal money, and then there's the LLC. And so if I take my money to buy my tools and buy my equipment for my LLC, well, that's a loan to my LLC. And then when the company, the LLC, makes money, the money that they pay to me, and I am both, by the way, but when they pay me, as a personal person who loaned them, well, then it's a repayment of a loan with interest. It's not income subject to income tax,
Right.
right? Now, that's one of those I don't know what I don't know things. How would a young entrepreneur know that they should not just buy their equipment, that they should create a loan on paper to the LLC, right? So that when they start making money from the business, that they're not getting taxed on the money that they use to start the business.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? There's a lot of gotchas out there. So know a CPA, know a good property and casualty guy, and then you got to start looking at people like me for, okay, how are we going to leverage this business to make sure that you're going to be okay when you can no longer work in this business? And if you have partners, here's a good one. So Antonio and Tim start the Smoking Simian property management company. Okay, great. Now all of a sudden, Tim dies. Uh-oh. Well, who's now your partner? It's my wife. Do you want to work with my wife? Does my wife know anything about property management? How much of the company is my wife entitled to? And what plan was put in place so that you could buy her out, so that you could run the company without her interference? She gets a check. She's good to go. She doesn't own a piece of the company anymore. How do you do?
Right.
Well, you got to talk to guys like me. I'm the guy that structures that stuff, called a buy-sell agreement, right? Or here's one for you. Tim Ehlers owns Wood Wealth Group, and I have a guy on staff that does taxes for all of the clients for Wood Wealth Group. That guy brings in $500,000 worth of revenue every year. Well, what if that guy dies during tax time? And all of my clients now go somewhere else to get their taxes done because my guy died. How long will it take me to find the right guy to join my team and to be able to do what that guy does? Well, if I'm reliant on one guy for something that's a key to my success, I need to have what's called key man insurance, right? And all that basically says is that guy dies, my business doesn't lose $500,000. I'm made whole with what, by putting a policy on him so that
Right.
if he were to die, then my company doesn't go broke or go under because of something unexpected, right? So there's a lot of different things that people have to think about. What to do if you start granting stock or granting stock options, right? Deferred income. How do you start as you start scaling your business and you're making more and more money? How do you create streams of cash that are not taxed as income? Well, Mitt Romney would tell you. Do you remember back when Mitt Romney got hammered by everybody because he said, my maid has a higher tax bracket than I do? And everybody's like, whoa, that's a terrible thing to say. He must be a tax cheat. No, that isn't it at all. What they don't understand is that Mitt Romney doesn't have income. He has what is classified as capital gains. So he doesn't
Right.
income tax rates, he pays capital gains tax rates, which are significantly lower than 50%, which is where a rich guy like him would be if his money was given to him as income. So once,
Sure.
how do you structure your things so that you have lots of money, lots of cash flow, but not income subject to income tax? And by the way, Antonio, we're at historically low income tax rates right now. So with us borrowing trillions and trillions of dollars, where do you think the income taxes will go in the future to help pay that bill?
Nice and high for us.
Yeah, so good luck with
Right.
that, right? Nothing's free. Nothing.
Right.
Everything has a price, right? So if something is too good to be true, if your idea is so awesome, right? Have the strength of ego to sit in front of somebody who's going to poke holes in it, right?
Sure.
That's for your benefit. Let's poke holes in it. Let's see where you're weak. Let's see where you're strong. And then make sure that you understand that you have to make sure that your expenses are kept in control and as a percentage of the revenues that you're bringing in. One of the biggest problems that people have as being new entrepreneurs is that they didn't have sufficient capital. They anticipated making money sooner than they made money, and they kept spending, and then eventually they didn't get the business that they wanted, and they wind up going bankrupt.
Sure.
And once you're bankrupt, what happens? Good luck with that.
Right.
Bankruptcy in a country like America, oh, that's one of the worst things that can happen to you. It destroys your ability to leverage debt. It destroys your ability to get a job. It can destroy your ability to do a number of different things. I'll tell you right now, I can't hire you if you've got if you show a record of not being able to control your money. Why would I hire you? Right now,
Right.
bankruptcies can happen for other reasons too. They can happen because somebody had an ugly divorce. They can happen because somebody had a really bad accident and they were just, they were lucky to survive, right?
Right.
That's not the guy I'm talking about. I'm talking about the guy that had to declare bankruptcy because he didn't have adequate reserves for the day when something bad would happen. And he just kept spending as if everything would go as perfect all the time. And the fact of the matter is, if you live long enough, you just realize that's fantasy. It's
Right.
fantasy.
Well, there's correct me if I'm wrong. If chapter 11 is the worst one, correct? Or is that the reorganizing?
Here's the deal. Doesn't matter. Doesn't
Okay.
matter. When you say the word bankruptcy, all of the world perks up a little bit and goes,
Sure.
ooh, right? It's a last, it is a last resort, and it should be a last resort because think about it. If you lent me $10,000, Antonio, or you gave me a boat and that boat was worth $50,000 and I was making installment payments to you. You bought the boat. You're expecting me to pay it off. And not only will you get your 50,000, but you're probably going to have 60,000 because you're charging me a little bit of interest. Well, if I don't pay you and then I sink the boat, now what? Now what? Are you a little upset with me because I created a debt and now I'm just going to say, sorry, you don't, I've declared bankruptcy. Sorry, you get to hold the bag. Well, that's
Yeah.
the thing. When it's a faceless corporation, I know people say, well, they can handle it or whatever. But the bottom line is, I know as a man that grew up with a certain set of values that neither a borrower nor a lender be. And if I borrowed that money, I am liable for that money because that money came from somewhere. And that person will be injured because of my circumstances. And I don't feel like they should just be left holding the bag on that. Right. So, I just don't believe that you should hurt people that way. And I also know that debt can be something that is a form of slavery. I mean, there's what, about 1 billion Muslims around the world that don't borrow money because it's a part of the religion. Why?
Sure.
Because debt is slavery. And we're a country that sometimes is a little too comfortable with debt. And
Right.
we don't realize how much it really is us. And the only way to break those chains for people that go too far with it is a bankruptcy. And it's
Gotcha.
looked at as being a good thing. Student
Right.
loans, by the way, are not dischargeable.
You got to
Cannot
pay them.
ever. They will get you for the rest of your life. They will get you
Right.
the IRS. There's no clearing student debt ever.
Yeah. They're one of the only ones, correct?
The correctamundo.
Yeah.
And what's really funny is, we're living in a world where you can get a mortgage for 2.5%, but a Parent Plus loan is 7, 8, 9, 12%.
Right.
Right. And it's just crazy. It's just crazy. So for people who aren't sophisticated enough about some of these financials, you could have the best idea in the world, but you're never going to make it because the people out there that are sophisticated with the financials, they're the ones that will make it through because you have to be able to bring your thing public in a realm that demands a certain amount of conformity in regards to taxes and law. So understand what those parameters are if you're going to play the game. You know what I mean?
Right.
We don't often do enough research on that because there's a lot of youthful optimism, which is,
Yes.
and we never want to hurt that, but we want to be smart about it. Harness that energy, use that energy, get the advice from the old farts, and don't listen to them when they give you crap about, oh, I don't think anybody needs that. Right.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, there's the world is cluttered with quotes from people who said nobody's ever going to need a computer in their house. There's plenty of that. Who would
Sure.
a telephone, right? So we get
There's always doubters.
there's always going to be the doubters. But, if you want your thing to take off and you want it to work, great. I know, we as a firm, we help entrepreneurs all the time. There's a lot of scientists and people like that. They're very good at what they do, but without us, they're not very smart when it comes to money.
Right.
So, when there's water squirting through my walls, just because I'm a retirement income certified professional with a bachelor's degree and all this life experience and blah, 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 and securities licenses or whatever, that doesn't do a lick for me when there's water squirting through my walls. I need a plumber. I need a specialized, intelligent person with the right training to accomplish that. I don't start smashing open the wall saying, well, if he can do it, I can do it. I'm smarter than him. I'm
Right.
smart as him. No, you're not. Intelligence is different than knowledge. And what I see from many of the people that have that youthful enthusiasm is that they don't have the knowledge that they think they do, but boy, do they have confidence. And I love the confidence, but they don't have the knowledge.
Need both.
And that knowledge can really, really save your butt. You know,
Right.
Look what happened with Robinhood, right? And
Sure.
the stop thing and all that. As I saw that going down, I thought to myself, their message of go outside the system, let's do something disruptive. I love it. That's great. But then when they were allowing people to buy stock on margin accounts, borrowed money, the traditional system would never let people do that, but
Right.
Robinhood does, and it's ruined people. People that are your age and younger, it has ruined them. So once again, the people who got into it thought they were smarter than the system, but they didn't know what the system knew.
Sure.
And those regulations are sometimes there because people got ruined. So be careful of what you're disrupting, right? Buying stocks on margin or playing on a platform that can't cover its debts, that's crazy. That's
Right.
crazy.
I agree.
So I worry sometimes that, the youthful ambition and the willingness to turn their back on the old guard is sometimes a little too egotistical. It's a little too ego driven.
Right.
And the other side is guilty, absolutely guilty, right? Of the ego that comes from the experience or whatever. Meet each other without ego and just have that conversation about what are the things that I need to know. That's really the bottom line. Drop your ego and let's just try to help each other.
Right. Right. Now, I wanted to shift gears for a second as we're ending or we're coming toward the end of our show here. We hadn't yet talked about how we met. And oddly enough, I hope you find this as funny as I do at this point in my life. I talk about my incredibly short time under your tutelage at Concord Wealth Management. I talk about it as I actually have a name for it. I call it my early life crisis because when I jumped in, the type of person I am, I jump into things. I'm very enthusiastic about them. But sometimes I don't always look at, I almost get too wrapped up in the end goal, which for me at the time was to build a huge book of business and be a millionaire, right? So when I realized the time and the work and all these things, and I realized that it wasn't for me, and I left the way that I did, I had this incredibly irrational fear that you and all the other people there would hate me forever. But I understand that is, it's whatever. And now that I look at it, I am incredibly thankful that that's what happened, because without, like you said, hindsight's 20/20. Without that experience, I wouldn't have corrected myself in the sense that, hey, when you start something, it's good to have the end goal. It's good to say that you want to be a millionaire, or for me now, maybe I want to have a cool studio in New York City or something like that. It's cool to have that there as the motivation, but you also have to understand and embrace all the hardships and the shortcomings that are going to come along the way. And at 21 or 22, however old I was when I came to you, I, incredibly ambitious and ready to go. And when I decided that it wasn't for me and I wanted to shift gears, I didn't know where I wanted to go, which is why I call it my early life crisis. Right. And you speak a lot about, or you spoke already about, how you moved from more of a corporate finance setting
And then you switched over, and I know more or less your story, how you moved to, the Northeast in Boston and everything like that. And you really switched industries. And if at that point in your life, none of that happened, that's fine. But was there some other point in your life where you were like, I jumped into this too quick and I jumped out equally as quick, and I'm not sure what's going to happen, and how do I navigate this?
Yeah, well, there's a lot to unpack there. I'm going to be as brief as possible because I know our time is coming to an end. But
Sure.
one, understand that the system that brought you into that situation was not honest. It was not honest with you.
Right.
Because they are not honest. Because their system depends on you having all of that enthusiasm, because what they're about to show you is going to be really hard.
Right.
And if they were to display it up front, they worry that they wouldn't find enough people. But what they don't realize is that it can be done a different way. And here at Wood Wealth Group, if you ever wanted to take that on again, it would never happen the same way, because here we would tell you up front every single thing that you're going to need to do, how it will lay out, and it would be 100% truthful, because I believe that the truth is the only thing that you should be talking about. And so just realize, and I also know as a dad, that when you're 21 years old, what you think is very different than what you will wind up doing. Okay.
Right.
So basically, just know that life is always a series of doors that open and doors that close. And it's how you react to it that will be the measure of your character, right? Now, I've never been fired from a job, but part of that is because I'm terrified of the emotional blow of somebody telling me I'm not good enough. That, to me, as a poor kid, is devastating, right? So I always had to have great grades. I always had to come in first. I always had to be on the varsity. I always, right? Always striving for more. So when I first left the corporate world, after being full of it, I've seen it all, I've done it all, and I spent 11 years on the road, Monday through Friday, most of the time. 11 years. There was a cost for that. And the cost was relationships and things that were valuable to me that I had not valued enough, because my values around providing for my family and my worth as a man coming from what I can provide, right? That was in my head. Nobody else was judging me that way. That was me. And
Right.
I still live with it today. And it's that it will never leave me. It's like someone who was once 400 pounds and now they're 170 pounds. They will always in their head remember what it was like walking around with 400 pounds, right? I will always walk around with some of those fears and anxieties because they make me who I am. And to a large degree, they made me successful. The fear was a great motivator, but no one ever knew it. I bought a business. I bought a franchise. I did the due diligence. I checked everything out. I did everything I wanted. And I bought a business, ran the business for a year, and I was not unsuccessful. But in the end, I sold the business at the end of the year. Why? Because it just didn't matter. I went from a technical education company where I helped people in ways to transform their lives, even though I rose from ground level helping people all the way up to the C-suite. Even though I did all that, I knew that what I was doing was translating into generational improvement of economics for families. I knew that what I did mattered. In the business that I purchased, it was tangible. Go here, do this job, it's done, get your pay, go home.
Right.
Run a crew, hire the crew, train the crew, do their payroll, do their, blah, 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 blah. Lather, rinse, repeat. Do your marketing, do your sales, do this, do that, right? Do the installations, collect the check. But if they didn't come through me, they'd go through somebody else. Didn't matter. I wasn't fulfilled in that job. And there's a balance between passion and basic necessity and basic economics. So you have to learn that, okay, so you want the living out of a van, TikTok lifestyle about how everything is wonderful. Well, they're never gonna show you when they're sitting in the van after the van got torched by somebody because there's idiots in the world.
Right.
They're never going to show you the downside, and realize that there's always a balance, but you have to weigh your passion for doing something versus whether or not it will fulfill your basic needs at least, and therefore. So know what gives you true fulfillment, because remember, I started the show by saying it, and I'll end the show by saying it. Money has no value. It is what you value that money will be a means to support. So
Sure.
clear with yourself about what you value. I value service to others. I am a Rotarian. I am an active Rotarian. I serve on boards. I do these things in the community. I'm the guy that will drive to the person to help them with their financial stuff and figure it all out because their husband died and they need somebody. And they'll never, ever have to worry about me because I mean it. I'm genuine. I show up with a coffee cake, for God's sake. Why? Because it's nice.
Sure.
I know that when I die, I'm going to have a legion of people that will come to say their last goodbyes. And they're going to say nice things because I did care. I really do care. And I live a genuine life where I say the truth and I let people know how I feel about it. And I don't judge, and I don't pontificate whenever possible, but I do try to help people to realize that going it alone is unnecessary. There are people that are willing, there are people that care, that will help you. And it doesn't matter what it is, mental health, finances, your physical health, whatever it is, teams get things done. And do you have the right team? Don't go, stop trying to reinvent the wheel. You're just not that smart. You can't be. You can't possibly own all the knowledge of the world. So find people, get to know them, leverage them because they want to be leveraged in your service when you find them.
Sure. Well, Tim, I got to say, this was a phenomenal conversation. I'm sure everybody found something in it through all your life experience. You're impeccable with your word. I could flatter you all day if we had more time, but nonetheless, I definitely appreciate you coming on. One other question, should be quick. I heard you mention something about Indiana. Are you from Indiana?
I was born in Wisconsin.
Okay.
And when my father became sober, he went to the Milwaukee School of Engineering, and that's where he got his degree. And then he took a job in South Bend, Indiana. And we moved from Wisconsin to South Bend, Indiana, and I lived there through high school. So from 5th grade through high school, I was in South Bend, Indiana. And then I lived in Michigan. And always around the Great Lakes.
Right.
Fell in love with a beautiful, beautiful Irish woman who is absolutely stunning. And I've completely outpunted my coverage. And I literally, I left my corporate job, I sold my house, and I bought a business, and I bought a house here in Brockton, uh, all within 3 months.
Wow. All for the love.
You know why? Because it's worth it. Because
Right.
my Kathy was worth it. And my life has never been happier. And I know that for the rest of my life, the thing that I value most is that relationship that I have with my spouse.
Right.
It was a missing thing in my life for a lot of years. And now I'm great. I'm great. I'm great. I get to serve my community, and I get to be there as a partner for my wife. So yeah, I grew up in Indiana for a bit. I went to school at Valparaiso University, the Lutheran Notre Dame, um, and I lived walking distance from Notre Dame University. So yeah, I'm from that area, but originally from Milwaukee, and I also lived in Michigan. I spent I spent a number of years, about 7 years, living in the city of Detroit. Um,
Right.
so I used to tell people when I moved here from Detroit, and then I'd say, "Don't worry, I'm not armed." Uh, but Detroit, once again, I learned a lot from living there. Uh,
Right.
a lot of people that fell victim to a system, and they were not prepared. They were not
Right.
prepared at all.
The reason I asked is because my girlfriend is actually from Indiana, and her family
Oh,
listens to the show, so they'd probably get a kick out
what
of it.
part of Indiana?
Bluffton.
Bluffton. Okay. All
Yes.
right.
Yeah, it's a little smaller town. It's about 45 minutes from Fort Wayne.
Yeah. Yep. I lived in Fort Wayne for a short time. Uh,
Okay.
great little community. Very, very nice community. But the northern part of Indiana, very different than the southern part of Indiana. Uh,
Right.
so at least you didn't say Kokomo. And when I say Kokomo, they're gonna laugh because they know why Kokomo. Uh,
Sure.
for anyone listening from Kokomo, but let's face it, there's been some weird history in Kokomo, Indiana, that all clan affiliations notwithstanding, Kokomo has been a weird place in history.
Right. So where can people find you, Tim? LinkedIn, Facebook, anything like that?
Listen, I am everywhere that you would expect a 53 technology loving guy can be. So LinkedIn is usually the better place to find me. You can also read my biography at www.woodwealthgroup.com, Wood Wealth Group,
Okay.
and take a look at what we do, because we are a fiduciary based full service firm that is not owned by anybody. There is no big wirehouse, like a Fidelity. There's no Charles Schwab. There's no big insurance company behind the scenes where we have to sell things. We don't do that here. Here, we are free to be problem solvers and be advocates for our clients. We don't sling products here. We don't find a solution off the shelf because there is no shelf. Our job is to learn what your values are and then understand what you're trying to accomplish. And then our job is to gather your data, create plans for you with options, and let you be empowered to be in the driver's seat and actually know what the hell you're doing. We're then there to basically help you map it out and to keep you on your path. We're relationship driven. We can do transactional things, everything from all the different insurances to managing money to IRAs and Roth IRAs and group benefits. And there's nothing we cannot do I'm sorry, I should say there's two things. Marijuana is still illegal on a federal level. So marijuana
Sure.
stocks are not allowed. through our broker dealer. And the other one is because cryptocurrency is used by organized crime and terrorism, we are still not able to offer cryptocurrencies. But outside of marijuana stock and cryptocurrency, we can do it. We do it.
Sure.
But I am a retirement income certified professional. I'm an RICP. There's only about 25 of us in the greater Boston area within 75 miles, and not all of them practice, and not all of them operate as fiduciaries like I do. They might be attached to a insurance company or a wirehouse or something like that. But my credentials basically say, if it's about retirement, that's my wheelhouse.
Specialty. Yeah.
About. So elder care, senior care, life during the second half of the ball game. That's my specialty. Someone else might be a specialist more on the accumulation side, right? And they're very intense with money management and, stock picking and all that stuff. I'm a little bit more on the, okay, now that you're there, what's it look like when we have to start spending it down? And yes, there is an actual right way to do that.
Sure.
The SOL when you run out of money.
Right.
More people die climbing down the mountain than people who die climbing up the mountain. I'm the climbing down the mountain guy. So
Right.
if you want to learn how to climb up the mountain with the climbing down in mind, I can help you there too.
Right.
But a lot of other guys, they only talk about going up the mountain. They never really talk about whether or not that's going to be good for going down later. So I can take you through all of your life stages. And it's nice to know that I put 4 kids through college. I have no debt from that because it was done the right way. Right? Every financial plan that is successful is because it was planned. Every unsuccessful financial outcome is because of current events and emotions. So talk to the guys that knows what he's doing. That's what I do. So Tim at Wood Wealth Group, and my cell number is 781-206-6788. I am licensed in many states. And if I'm not licensed in your state, well, I can be licensed in your state, because when you're licensed in Massachusetts, you can be licensed anywhere. Because they accept Massachusetts as a gold standard. So I've got clients all over the country.
Right. Well, there you go, people. You heard the man. If you're failing to plan, then you're planning to fail. Make sure you guys follow me on all my social media, subscribe to the show. It's all in the description. And again, I want to just say thank you, Tim, for coming on. And this was a great conversation. I definitely appreciate it.
Absolutely, my friend. And thank you for having me.